Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome back to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. This week in the news, more unrest in the country of Egypt as the ongoing protest movement has given the recently elected president an ultimatum: step down by Tuesday or face a mass rebellion. Here's how things unfolded this week. 20+ million Egyptian citizens have flooded the streets of Egyptian cities in a show of frustration over President Morsi's failure to keep the promises he made when he came into power.
Now, at the beginning, 7 were killed and 600 injured. Now, many other news outlets speculate that this demonstration could be the largest in the history of the world. Now, within the episodes of violence, about 500 protesters stormed the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood, throwing Molotov cocktails and setting fire to the compound. Military forces arrived, firing tear gas into the crowds to disperse them in their attempts to reduce the chaos.
A spokesperson for the president said that yes, it's been a difficult year, and the president has made mistakes, but he also called for the opposition to have dialogue. Of course, that's very unlikely because the opposition has already said in numerous statements that enough is enough, and that they don't want to have dialogue, and that they don't think President Morsi is fit to rule.
Now, a failing economy, worsening water and fuel shortages, rising bread prices, as well as human rights abuse are just some of the issues that is fueling the protesters' anger. They have given the president a deadline, saying that he must resign by Tuesday at 5 p.m. Now, on the other side of the coin, just a few kilometers down from the presidential palace, supporters of the president were having their own demonstration called for by the Islamic Alliance, a coalition of Islamist parties in support of the president and his organization, the Muslim Brotherhood.
The alliance says that the president was elected democratically, and the only way for him to be removed is through the elections. A political activist, Ahmed Naguib, said that Morsi never fulfilled any of his promises and that he came not through an orderly election process, but through a revolution, and he did not respect that revolution that put him there.
Naguib also expressed his desire to see unified, non-fragmented opposition that can negotiate with the current government, as well as a smooth transition and a peaceful one. The Muslim Brotherhood needs to realize that we're not going anywhere and that they need to transition smoothly and give up all the powers, because there's no talk of legitimacy with almost the entire nation out on the streets, he continued.
Amazing. That's a lot of people. Now, later in the week, when it was confirmed that the military was back in charge, the scene of Egypt's revolution, Tahrir Square, erupted with shouts of joy. For the second time, a movement sparked by the country's youth has led to another leader's overthrow. These protests, organized by the Tamarov movement, has called for Morsi, the country's first democratically elected president, to go. They've been calling for that for days.
It was the Minister of Defense that announced that Morsi was no longer in power and that the country was on a new path. The defense minister read publicly their roadmap, which consisted of suspending the Constitution provisionally. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Constitutional Court will declare an early presidential election, as well as run the affairs of the country until a new president is elected.
The opposition leader, Mohamed El-Berardi, said this was a fresh start for Egypt. Supporters of Morsi vowed an oath to protect their country. Well, the whereabouts now of Morsi, of course, are unknown, but it's believed that he and several members of his party have had a travel ban placed on them so they can't, freely move about. The military, who's had a grip on the country since 1952, made its presence felt on the streets, and it's evident that even after 2 years and a new democratically elected president, that it is they who still remains the most powerful force.
Now, the crowds have been in full force since the military coup ousting Morsi. Fireworks and lasers have been going off in the streets as celebrations continued. Now, Egyptian citizens are saying that history is in the making. Authorities are preparing for even more uprisings and violence since this most recent removal of yet another leader.
Crowds gathered in Tahrir Square to celebrate the announcement that their president, Mohamed Morsi, would be replaced. An announcement was read by the Egyptian military chief, stating that President Morsi failed to meet the demands of the people. The military denied the allegation that a military coup was underway, but a high-ranking aide to the president said that it was nothing short of a coup.
Police were deployed in heavy combat riot gear to deal with any violence from the crowds. Now, the concern was with the pro-Morsi demonstrators who were also gathering not far from those who wanted to oust their president. The country was bracing itself for major clashes and confrontations when the two opposing sides met, and that's exactly what occurred.
Yeah. President Morsi remained in an undisclosed location with no contact other than to update his Facebook page, where he posted a message saying he rejects the army's ultimatum. Morsi's supporters say they would be defiant in what they called an illegitimate military coup, and that's exactly what they did. 2 days later, his supporters clashed with police and demanded that their president be reinstated.
These battles resulted in at least 30 people killed and more than 200 injured. Tens of thousands of Morsi supporters had gathered for Friday's noon prayer. Now, senior Muslim Brotherhood leader said there would be no retreat. He shouted, "We are not going home. We are staying here until this coup is over and our president returns." He concluded, "Even if the tanks run us over, we will take back our revolution."
After prayers, the crowds marched to the heavily guarded military barracks where they believe their president is being held. Soldiers fired tear gas at the crowds to disperse them, but the demonstrators continued to push forward. One man was shot in the head as the army opened fire. Once the tear gas had cleared, the crowds would immediately continue to push forward as the military helicopters monitored the situation safely from above.
From there, the Morsi supporters flowed into Tahrir Square, where they clashed with those who were still celebrating the president's downfall. Now, rocks and Molotov cocktails were thrown and gunshots rang out as both sides clashed. Once again, the Army helicopters watched from above, but did not get involved with the massive amounts of civil unrest that were taking place right below. Now, Katan, very sad and unstable situation here for the Egyptian people. Clearly, what the leaders and civilians in Egypt need is the peaceful solution, a foundation they both can agree on to solve this conflict peacefully before another life is lost. Now, if you're in Egypt right now watching this broadcast, get ready to write down this information so you can contact Yeshua Hawkins at the House of Yahweh and find out how you can bring peace to your country.
You can do that as well as ordering your free copy of the monthly newsletter and a prophetic word by writing the House of Yahweh at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494. And you can visit them on the website at www.yahweh.com or www.yisroelhawkins.com. And of course, you can email them at info@yahweh.com. And all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen.
Don't go anywhere. Up next is Yeshua Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.